Thank you very much for coming. Thank you particularly a number of ESADOC friends of ours who are here. This panel discussion is not about what documentaries we should be making about Africa, but what documentaries Africa is making itself. The focus is East Africa. The emphasis is on new technology like the mobile phone. And the question is whether an indigenous style of documentary film is emerging. As Heidi said, we had a session in Nairobi last February, and it was there that I met our 4 speakers. And 3 have come over to Sheffield, especially for this session, and 1 is stuck on Skype without a visa. So welcome and thank you all. Okay. I think you'll agree with me, they cover the ground quite well between them. On Skype is Mark Kagwa of the iHub community in Nairobi, which describes itself as an open space for technologists, investors, tech companies, and hackers. Can you hear me, Mark?
Yes, I believe that's me on the screen
Tell us a bit about the iHub, Mark.
Sure. So I'm sitting in the iHub in Nairobi in Kenya, and this is basically one of the leading spaces on the continent that's fostering innovation around technology, specifically the mobile phone. And as the internet and technology continues to penetrate the African continent, this is one of the spaces that's putting together the best minds, the brightest minds, and the best people to back them to create the next generation of African technology by Africans for Africa and the rest of the emerging world.
Thanks a lot. We'll come back to you in a minute.
Sure.
You cued yourself because Mark is a multi-talented technocrat. He's written award-winning animated short films and video games. He curates an online collective of digital artists. My job, he says, is to put Africa on the map, showcasing insight on mobile, web, and innovation in our great continent. He's going to do a stunning presentation, I know he will. When he was in Nairobi with us, he was so good, we invited him there and then back to our European workshops, and he came along to North Italy a few weeks ago. So then, wearing the hat, it's not Charles Aznavour, it's Charles Aziba, who advises the Kenyan government on film matters. He's the founder and CEO of the Kenyan International Film Festival. He's also MD of Film Africa, which has published an annual audio-visual guide for East and Central Africa. He's about to start a documentary film festival in Nairobi. He's involved in setting up a film school in Nairobi, and he's full of innovations. And Nairobi, as the sort of central place for film for East Africa, is buzzing. Next to him is Ogova Ndego, who, it's fair to say, represents the other side, whereas Charles is a bit of a government appointment, which has good and bad things about it. Ogova represents the non-establishment grassroots film movement. He runs the Lola Kenya Screen Audio Visual Media Movement. For those of you who can't speak Bantu, like me, Lola is Bantu for sea. Is that right? Good, got that right. For children and youth, which includes a film festival. He also publishes the website artmatters.info, a creative journalist initiative. I think it's fair to say that Charles will talk mostly about Kenya. Ogova will broaden it out a bit to include East Africa more. And finally, there's my old friend Keith Shiri, who is here to give an overview of African documentary, to sort of contextualize it all. You might know Keith. He's a well-known figure now in film festivals. He was brought up in Zimbabwe. And for some reason I'm not particularly clear about, he lives in Beirut. He's the founder of Africa at the Pictures, the London African Film Festival. He advises the Berlinale, the Venice and London film festivals on African selections, as well as the African Academy Awards. He's a research fellow of the University of Westminster, and so on. So now, this session will last up to 1.5 hours. Each speaker will make a presentation, quite a lot of it including film. and it's my intention at least that will not go on for more than, I don't know, 50 minutes or so, after which I hope there'll be questions and open discussion. We'll start with Mark Kegwa. I'm worried that a 19th century chapel might win over 21st century technology. So while we've got Skype going, let's hand over to you, Mark. Okay?
Thanks, Hugh. Can everybody hear me? Great, yeah, I can hear you. Thanks for the resounding response. So, if I could sort of start and just take a look at the African continent as we know it. It's really been dominated, for the most part. A lot of people's views on the African continent tend to fall within two stereotypes, either something resembling crisis, and so this could be famine, or evil, corrupt, malevolent dictator with a machine gun, or it's exotic, meaning that it's the beautiful, untouched, pristine savannas and so on. But there's another side of Africa that's emerging, and specifically within the past 3 years. And this is the kind of Africa that for me, as Hugh rightly said, I feel charged with putting on the global map. If you've seen the NASA picture of the night sky, you'll find that it doesn't show much going on in Africa, and yet if you look at a couple other infographics, which I've shared on a number of my websites, there's plenty going on. Facebook has shown this, over 40 million connections happening, and a number of other services show that technology, specifically the mobile phone, is really, really pioneering a new chapter on the continent. So for me, I'd just like to share with you 3 ideas that the filmmaker and possibly anybody with any interest on the African continent should pay attention to now in their projects and in the near term to long-term future. So if we can look at co-production alone, there's some great opportunities there. In the recently concluded Cannes Film Festival in France, an example being the National Video and Film Foundation from South Africa signed what's the 8th treaty, and this was with Ireland. And basically what this allows is it brings an opportunity for co-production from different parts of the globe, and the UK being one option and several other European countries qualify, allowing them to get the same incentives that local content creators get in co-production. And there's dozens of films that have benefited as a result, including some that were up for contention at the top prize. So if you're to look at the continent through the lens of a business opportunity purely on the basis of co-production, there's a lot that the continent has to say for itself. And if you take the time to look, there's if you do nothing at all, then go into it as a narrative-led venture, and also a venture with a means to distributing at a global level. There's a strong business proposition there, as is demonstrated by South Africa and a couple other emerging film communities, as I'm sure the rest of the panelists will get to in a short while. For me, one thing that I'm passionate about and I speak on pretty often, it's the mobile phone, right? It's everything from, Heidi and Hugh could attest to this. I normally ask, what was your first mobile phone? Just to find out. And normally the results will surprise you how important it's become in each and every one of our lives. Now, when we look at the African continent, there's over 600 million mobile phones. And of these, about 100 million are not only mobile web enabled, but have the ability to consume a decent amount of content. And the further you drill down, the more you find what would not strike you, but is a very, very potent addressable audience. In terms of co-creation, and by co-creation I mean thinking as the filmmaker and looking at this set of Africans, all of them incredibly adept at and well-versed at using their mobile phones, looking at them as a group of people ready to consume and co-create content with you. One brilliant example is an online web community fast growing across the African continent called Boza. That's BOZZA. And what they're doing is, it started just as a proof of concept, initially just approaching and training a handful of filmmakers in a township in South Africa. And in 2 days, after just taking very, very rough cuts of the short films these gentlemen and one woman made, and putting them on a way that can be consumed on pretty much the feature phone, the dumb phone as it were, right? Pretty basic video content. They got about 40,000 users in a geographical area, less than 10 square kilometers. And by the end of that month, 170,000 users, all dying to take part and to consume this information. What that showed them in something that they put together, just by streaming it, was that not only are Africans prepared to consume content, but given the chance are able and capable of producing some on their all of their very own. And I think what that has attested to is that the opportunity is there to come in a more structured way and present the chance. Participatory video is something which I guess Hugh, Heidi, or any of the panelists can mention, but the mobile phone and the options it opens up are completely waiting to be explored, especially in terms of new media and cross-media at that. Lastly, but certainly not least, something that's affected me personally and that I find is probably the most useful thing in my life today is this idea of of mobile money, and in the context of what I want to share with you, co-funding. So there's a service in Nairobi, actually across Kenya and now across the world. It's about 5 years old. It's called M-Pesa. And how this works is basically it allows any two phones to send and receive money via text message. All right, and that might sound pretty rudimentary, but in the 5 years this has been around, there's about 17 million Kenyans. 90% of adult households have access to this service. And in December this past year, sent over £1 billion, in person-to-person transfers. Now, at the heart of this is one-to-one transfers, creating a whole new market that allows Africans to collectively fund and participate in directing small amounts that amount, to great things, and possibly opening up, a whole new type of Kickstarter or Indiegogo type of movement on this side. So, for a third world country doing about, well over €1 million a month on a service where most transactions are less than €10, that's pretty significant, and that as an opportunity to collaborate and to see this mobile phone as more than just something that rings and is used to send text messages and call, but as something that presents an audience that's ready to consume, to create, and to collectively fund the next project, possibly with you, possibly for you, and definitely to a large extent for the African audience. A lot of filmmakers definitely visit the continent, feel compelled to tell the stories, and yet, perhaps the approach can be seen as fly-by-night in how you visit, you get the story, post-production is done as elsewhere, and the rest is history. I don't need to repeat that. But what the mobile phone is offering now in terms of writing the future of where this goes is anybody's game. If I could recommend perhaps a number of resources for you to check out African content, at least some of the best African film and video content coming out now, we've got contenders for the Netflix of Africa or the Hulu of Africa right now. And one of the ones that I recommend and I've spent some time on with the team is Buni TV. That's BUNI.TV. And it's definitely worth checking out. If that doesn't spark some ideas, I'm always open and I look forward to the discussion from this panel. I know you're in very capable hands, and I wish I could definitely be there myself. And thank you so much for this, and I look forward to sparking some debate and some questions from you. Thank you.
Hey, Mark, don't go away. Don't go away, Mark, because...
Yeah, I'm right here.
Introduce this little YouTube film so we can play that in now. Okay, do you want to introduce it? This is, the mobile phone facts.
That's right. Yeah.
Well,
I think that's a good introduction as any.
Okay, let's go for it, Heidi. Heidi's practicing her techniques now. It's a great pity that Mark can't be with us because he has a highly visual presentation. Have you all heard of M-Pesa or not? I mean, M-Pesa as a money transfer system, but until Mark had spoken, I wasn't aware that this can be another Indiegogo and Kickstarter and crowdfunding source for films, which we're increasingly having to rely on in this poor, poverty-stricken community of documentary filmmakers. Anyway, Mark, I hope, will be up at the end of the presentation to answer questions. So The theme of the mobile phone, by the way, will run through the other presentations you'll be hearing today. So, Charles, do you want to come up here and strut your stuff? Mark, we'll be listening out for you later, okay? So thanks a lot.
Right, after all that powerful presentation from Mark from Nairobi, I'm going to try to take you through some of the facts and figures when it comes to the film industry in Kenya. I happen to be one of those what I can call sacrificial lamb when it comes to deal with film issues and you're working close to the government of the day, especially when you're engaging them. I work partly with government in terms of advice about issues related to film and film policy. Right now, currently I'm sitting on the board of the advisors, we call them the commissioners or the directors of the Kenya Film Commission. I would say, honestly, we haven't really done much yet because the structures which you're working under, there's still no film policy yet. So the things that are not in place in terms of promotion of the Kenyan film industry. Having said that, I think it'd be good to note a few things that I'd like to mention. One being the status of the film industry in Kenya, if it is an industry yet. I'm sure Gova will correct me on that. I also like to talk about the Kenya International Film Festival, which is a festival that I started 6 years ago. We'll also like to talk about local initiatives in the absence of the government support in terms of activities and other initiatives that have been created to support especially documentary making in the region. And finally, I will talk about what the government has and has not done in the film industry. In the year 2006, we saw the first edition of the Kenya International Film Festival, which attracted only 36 films, and mainly these films were from the French embassy because there weren't many films available in Kenya to do a festival. This has gradually developed or grown. The need of, after having set up the festival, the local filmmakers saw a window where they can showcase some of their products. The year 2007, we saw an overwhelming 50 local films. Of course, when you talk about local films, Kenyan films, 50 doesn't mean that are all big films. All of them were like experimental films, and a lot of them were short films also. Why am I mentioning this? The fact that there was a platform where local people can show their products actually encouraged a trend in terms of development of the film industry that actually got a lot of filmmakers who have been struggling to do projects actually pitch and present some of their products to the film fraternity. This has actually developed at a very steady pace, and I will skip all those many years and go to the year 2011, where we were doing the 6th edition of the Kenya International Film Festival. We had an overwhelming 600 films entered in the festival from 57 countries around the world. To us, this is a clear indicator of the potential that the film industry has within the region. We actually selected 365 films that were screened in 5 cities simultaneously for 10 days. This was very suicidal. Of course, I had Keith as one of the members of the jury, and he can tell you what happened in terms of trying to get all these done in 10 days. Why did we do this? One key thing is we lack a film-going culture in Kenya. So one of the key things that the Kenya International Film Festival has been trying to do is to encourage a cinema-going culture. And screening all these films was to expose people to many films from different parts of the world with different cinema languages. because we also lack what I could call a mentorship program, people who have done films that can talk to especially the young people about filmmaking. So the more the film product is available to the young filmmakers, especially and students, the more we'll encourage them to make films. And of course, if you look at it in terms of what would be what you call the character of the Kenyan film, it's also cannot be well defined. So for creating this character of the film that could say this is a film from Kenya, we need people to appreciate their own background, their own skill, also the resources that are available to them. This has really worked well for the industry in the sense that we now have people creating, engaging, and talking about film. And of course, from the previous editions, we also created what we call the outdoor screening, where we are taking the film to the people, especially in the slum areas where there are crowded people, and we do an open, in Kenya we call it walk-in, where you just walk in and watch films. We do this with especially short films where it's like between 5 minutes to 10 minutes, and people just walk in and watch films and might not even be discussing them, but of course that encourages people to talk about film as they go on their own jobs and the rest of it. One issue that has come through in terms of looking at the industry and how it's been stagnating is more to do with for a very long time, Kenya did not have a cultural policy, not only Kenya, but the East African region. So with the lack of cultural policy, a lot of film-related products were actually going towards what I could call like the information and communication, which is a parent ministry. And of course, that doesn't work because it's supposed to be seen as a government propaganda tool, and film is supposed to be a point where the people are engaged in the government in terms of telling their own stories. We also lacked what you call the film policy. The film policy has actually been developed, but it has not come out to the public. So without a film policy, even co-production treaties and other activities that are related to that don't really come to fruition, because then there's still a debate of whether or not to engage a certain aspect of filmmaking in terms of the other partners who are coming on board. Having said all that about the Kenya International Film Festival, I think it is also good to look at the local initiatives. The fact that the film has not fully developed, the people who have taken up to themselves to develop the industry, to move it to another level. Of course, Ogovo will be talking about his initiative, which is the Lola Kenya Screen, which is one of the initiatives that we think within Kenya is actually making a bigger difference within the film industry. We also have other activities which I'm also related to participating as one of the directors is the Film Africa Initiative. Film Africa Initiative is actually more to do with also doing research on film-related matters and sharing this research information with other people who might be interested in doing projects of film in Kenya. The other thing that the Film Africa Initiative has actually come up with is, apart from the publication of the annual audiovisual guide, is we're coming up next year with the first East African documentary festival. We are calling this Film Africa DocFest. I'll be announcing the dates later, but we think there is room to show documentaries. And this is based on the fact that after the research that was done by the Film Africa, we found out that within the East African region, there is a very different characteristic of documentary filmmaking, especially when you look at Kenya. The documentaries made out of Kenya actually mainly they're international NGO-related documentaries, which are more about human rights and issues. If you look at Rwanda, they have a lot of documentaries which are talking about peace and reconciliation. They're talking about the genocide stories. They want to use the media in terms of expressing themselves, talking about issues that actually happen around them. A classic example of some of this is a lot of the genocide stories that have come out of Rwanda, and that is being used by the Rwandese to talk about the issues that what they experienced. In Burundi, it's a completely different ballgame because it's being an agricultural country. A lot of the documentaries about agriculture and good food, and also talking about cultural issues. So within the East African region, we got a lot of different aspects of documentaries that are being done. So what we're looking at is why not create a platform where we can share and bring all these documentaries done within the region and show them. One of the other key reasons why we want to do this is if you made a documentary in Kenya, and I would still say Ogova is my witness, you'll be asked by the broadcaster to pay for it to go on air. You've already spent all your money making a documentary. Why should you pay the broadcaster to air it? So then the film festivals become the only other venue where you can actually screen some of these documentaries. So we want to encourage a platform where we can actually bring out that and showcase some of these documentaries that are made in the region. I don't know how I'm doing on time. One other key thing that I'm looking at is how is the government involved in the region, in Kenya, for example, the Kenya government in the development of the film industry? All I can say is there have been structures put in place. I think Kenya will be the only other East African country which has a film commission. Ogova just informed me that Tanzania had one, but it's no longer. I don't think it's operational right now. The fact that we have a film commission means that there is a lot more we can use. It's a platform to engage the government and discuss some of these issues. Whether that is working or not, that is to be discussed. But also, we have other platforms that have been created, like we have the revamped Kenya Film Classification Board. It used to be called the Censorship Board, but I think what we are looking at is we are not in a position to start censoring the films that much. We want to classify them so that we can advise parental advisory as opposed to censoring to stop people from being creative and making some films. We also have a department we call the Department of Film Services, which is actually more closer to articulating the government projects and issues related to that. So where does that leave us? The position we are now in is just the sheer fact that we have a film under the Ministry of Information and Communication. It actually creates another. It actually makes it difficult for the filmmakers to engage the government directly as creatives, because at that point we're engaging the government, we're actually engaging them as people who are actually working on information that is actually supposed to be streamlined and given out through the government tools. If we were under, for example, Ministry of Culture, then we'd be looking at everything else that is film-related as a cultural activity, so that it is easier then to do an exchange and to share with other people when you're dealing on issues of co-production and dealing with any other related treaties. So its industry is vibrant. I think I can say for sure that the last couple of years there's been a lot of activity in film within Kenya. But I think it's also good to mention here to you that there are two areas of film that you need to know when you want to do business in Kenya. There's what you call the service industry, which has been the biggest industry in Kenya, where people are serving foreign crews. I think in the region we have the biggest production crew in terms of, so far we call the Kenya Film Studios. They have facility for servicing a lot of foreign crews. So a lot of films that have been made in Kenya in the last 20 years plus, I think 10 of them have been nominated for Oscar. International films shot in Kenya with the foreign crew. But of course, these are Kenyan stories. I think the last one out was The First Grader, which was shot by BBC. I don't know if any of you watched The First Grader. I think it won a couple of awards. It won the Audience Awards in, I think, over 5 international film festivals. So what we are right now is, as we interact with the documentary filmmakers, we want to create a platform suitable enough for both the locals to work with the international crew on doing either the Kenyan stories or also getting the locals to come out, or the Kenyan filmmakers to actually come out and make films out of Kenya. So the co-production treaties are one of the key things we're looking at. And This year, we're having another festival, which is going to be the Kenya International Film Festival 7th edition, and we are looking at what you call the World Classics. Why do you want to show World Classics? We want to show World Classics because, as I said earlier, we don't have an established film culture. Most of our cinema halls actually being converted into churches, which is a pity. So the only thing we're looking at is, as part of government, is to encourage people to start going back to the cinemas. We can only encourage that by showing people what is seen as the best films ever done in the world. So this year we'll be screening at least up to 200 films from around the world, but these are films made from the 20s up to, let me say, 80s mainly. So if you have any of your favorite film that was shot in 1935, for example, and you want it sent over to the Kenya International Film Festival, we'll be quite willing to work with you. And we encourage to see some of the images of when film was an art. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charles. Here, of course, is a chapel that's been converted into a picture house, sort of. Various questions to ask Charles, which we can take up afterwards. I wish you hadn't said that bit about wanting old films, Charles. I was looking for this new thrust in Kenya, and you want us to produce our old classical movies. But there we go. Okay. Now we'll move on. When I look at more of the grassroots movement in Kenya, Ogova, are you going to make your presentation from there? Are you? You're going to come up here? Okay. So Ogoya Ondego, who runs the Lulu Kenya Screen Audio Visual movement and has done a lot for the more grassroots filmmaking, particularly amongst children in Kenya, which is extremely thriving, as we know from a lot of participatory video that is produced by AMREF, the Italian NGO. And those of you who have been on ESADOC will know Angelo Loy, who is a marvellous, marvellous filmmaker working with street children in Nairobi. And he's one of our regular staff. That is through him we went to Nairobi in the first place. Okay, come on, Ogova.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor to have to stand before you and to speak in the name of the generation of today and tomorrow. They're the children and youth. They are always the segment that is always neglected. But I'm glad that they are represented here, and I will speak for them. My topic is grassroots film culture promotion. That is what I do. And because of that, I want just to run through some of the things I have done since 1997 up to today. And I split my presentation into 3 segments. The first segment is where I have to speak to you for about 3 minutes. And the next part, I will show you some documentary. There's a documentary with the clips that was selected by the children to show some of the activities we're engaging in 24/7 and 365 days per year. Maybe the first thing I should say is that the Lola Kenya Screen is an audiovisual media festival, skill development program, and market for children and youth in Eastern Africa. And we do several things. The first thing we do is an annual film festival where we show the best possible international productions for children, youth, and family. To date, I can report that we have shown at least 1950 films from 102 countries across the world at that festival. The second thing we do is that we have a quarterly mentorship and internship program for media students, students of culture and related areas that we offer in creative and cultural entrepreneurship, but mainly anchoring on the back of audiovisual media. The third thing we have is that we have a monthly film forum. This is a film discussion, film show, a networking forum that we hold every last Monday of the month since December 15th, 2005. And I have to acknowledge Goethe Institute, our partner. We've done this with them. We are continuing to do it, and I'm sure we shall continue to do it even in the future with them as long as the results to show for it. Every last Monday of the month sees film players, funders, policymakers, writers, critics, journalists congregating at Goethe Institute in Nairobi to see a local film, to discuss it, debate, and network. And it's often the first place where local films and talent, is spotted and promoted. So far, we've promoted at least 100 films. We showcased 100 films from Eastern Africa. Eastern Africa is sometimes referred to as the Great Lakes and the Horn of Africa region, which comprises 11 countries. The other thing we have is that we have a fortnightly mobile cinema in the communities where we take films and we show them to the people. If the people cannot come to the cinemas, the people cannot come to the festivals, we must take films to the people in order to promote the film going and film consumption culture. The other thing we do is that we have a weekly school outreach program. We go to schools, and this is where the skill development program comes in, where we teach kids how to be entrepreneurs, to be creative in the fields of filmmaking, cultural journalism, event presentation, critical appreciation, and media literacy. That is Lola Kenya Screen. I'm also associated with the Africa Movie Academy Awards. I'm sure the moment I talk about Academy Awards, you will start thinking of the Oscars of America. We also have our own Oscars in Africa. And what happens is that we identify creativity in the films, and the film players is recognized, and then it is rewarded. It is based in Nigeria, but it is an Africa-wide initiative, and I happen to be the regional director, Eastern Africa regional director of Africa Movie Academy Awards. Something else we do is that it is also very difficult to get independent producers together, especially independent producers who are specializing in special content, children, gender mainstreaming, climate change, agriculture. It's not very easy to get those people together. So with the help of UNESCO in Paris, we were able to come up with a network. It's called IPO Eastern Africa. So again, it brings together independent producers in television, in film, to network for the good of their profession. Then I wanted to say that the next festival, the 7th Lola Kenya Screen in Nairobi, it is going to run between the 6th and the 11th of August. It takes place every second week of August. It has happened like that since 2005. So this year we are going to be celebrating the 7th edition. So what I would like to say is that in case you need any more information, I want to refer you to our website, lolakenyascreen.org. But I don't want anyone to leave here without having our literature. If you don't have literature, please collect it from me. I would be glad to answer questions. As I sit down, we are going to show the documentary that talks about the work of Lola Kenya Screen. Some of the things I've talked about are not in that documentary. Then after that, we will also show you 3 clips, 3 short films done by the children, conceived by the children, written by the children, shot by the children, edited by the children, but packaged by Lola Kenya Screen. So I believe we shall interact after that. Thank you. Lola Kenya Screen, we call it an audiovisual media platform for children and youth in Eastern Africa that comprises a film festival component, a production workshop,
what should be done, because traffic cannot be controlled easily. Next time you think of coming to town, please leave your car at home and board a matatu. Thank you.
Creative journalism. This is festival press, people who report on the events that go on during the festival, and a market that is used to showcase products, services, and philosophies targeting children, youth, and families.
Wait, you're saying? Action.
Said it's mine, but I'm the one who pointed it out first anyway.
Here at Lola Kenya Film Festival, we get to learn a lot about film and about the press. I have learned how to be a journalist and be good in what I can be.
As a judge, you just concentrate on the film. When you finish, you judge it by writing the technical quality, directing, topic and theme, and also storyline.
Well, it's fun and it's a nice thing to do in your holidays here. And if you have friends with you, then somehow you have more motivation and all. So it becomes more fun. And on top of that, if someone gets something new, I think it's good.
Lola Kenya Screen is a place where we learn a lot. We are able to speak out our minds. We are able to share our experiences. And if you're talented, your talent is polished.
My experience has been really fun. I really enjoyed it, and we've been watching some movies, and we've been making films, and I was in the animation group, and we had to draw the characters. We had to cut them out, and we had to put them on this manila piece of paper where we had to do the backgrounds. Then we had to video that, and we had to make it into a film. And then we had to do the sounds and the talking. And then we've been watching films.
Advise all the children who are out there, maybe during your holidays when you have nothing to do, don't just stay at home. Come to the Lola Kenya Film Festival. You'll get to learn a lot about everything that involves filmmaking and editing films, and it will be really beneficial to you. So this is something that is really worth it, and you have to try it.
We are hoping to create some cultural and international understanding, and that's why we find that for us as Lola Kenya Screen, we present the festival to all kinds of children, whether they're white or black or green.
Echo, 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 echo. Change begins to be. Nikitaka, nikitaka mimi, nikitaka, nikitaka mimi, nikitaka mimi, mabadiliko huanza na mimi.
And I have a passion and love for the environment.
I trim the hedge to make it neat. Besides, I cut the flowers in the garden. Keeping the compound tidy is my duty. In my cleaning routine, I sweep the open spaces, the courtyard, and the footpaths. Watering plants and flowers forms part of my activities. Finally, I collect the trash and burn them. I hope you care for the environment the same way I do.
The computer, probably the greatest invention by man, has been regarded as the future of the young generation. But this is slowly turning and changing into the monster of the new age.
My name is Crystal. I'm 9 years old, and I think the computers are good because I use the computers to communicate with my friends all over the world for entertainment, and I also listen to music, and I check my emails, and I play video games.
I'm Vince, and Samantha, and Vanessa.
Now these are the children that are going to be asking their views on computers. Do you guys like computers?
Yes.
Now let's check out what they have to say.
Computers are bad because you can go on a kind of place you should not go and see many things that you're not supposed to know about.
Well, I have to disagree with her because she said they're only bad. But I think the bad end good because they help you access information from the internet. For example, if I want to know what's happening in, for example, Canada, and I'm in Kenya, unless I watch that on the news, the only other way is to go onto the internet and find out.
Computers can also be addictive. Some people go on some sites like porn, which can cause psychological effects. And I'd like to tell other children to limit the sites that they use. They should watch out, and this is slowly turning into the monster of the new age. When I grow up, I want to be an actress. My friends and I often act out different scenes.
You can't fight it over a scarf. You wear it today and she will wear it tomorrow, okay?
My friends and I also enjoy dancing to different tunes, and when I come to the theater, we usually see different groups of performers practicing or presenting cultural pieces, dances and shows. I learn about my culture and enjoy it. They teach children how to draw, paint and perform. My friends and I also enjoy different shows, plays, dramas, and also interact with different actors and artists who we want to be like. If you are a kid and want to be an actor in future, find time to hang around the Kenyan National Theatre.
Okay, Keith, come on now. It's time for you to put this in a more continental context, and from grassroots children's filmmaking to the world you inhabit of advising these glamorous film festivals in Europe about African cinema. Come and show us where it's at, particularly the documentary.
Okay. What I think I'm going to try and put these things in context of how, for those who might not have an idea of the, just to contextualize what happened in the continent. Sometimes it's very difficult to really get people to understand that we, I just have to go through this whole colonial experience, if you like, and if you can see, this is Africa. This is how Africa was, divided or carved after the Berlin conference in 1884. So there, you have the whole, the king would say France had the blue and Great Britain had the pink and Belgium the yellow.
We're getting off mic, Keith.
Etc. So what you can see is that in film, the emergence of African cinema followed those lines, if you like. It follows the colors. For most people, until quite recently, African cinema only represented the blue, these French-speaking territories, and that's how it's always been funded over the years, over time, and to a small extent, of course, the Lusophone, the green, Portugal, we have Angola and Mozambique and Guinea-Bissau. Very little, of course, about Italy, but Italy was bitter. For me, there's a film called Africa Addio. Did anyone see this film? And it was an angry film in many ways, and I think that would say goodbye to Africa. And I think that, for me, it was almost racist film that you could ever see. But it gave you the anger, which was, at the time, visually very stunning. The images are stunning, in its narrative. It's a documentary. And who have not seen it, perhaps I can just quickly show this film. You've all seen the film? You've all seen this film? Okay, I'm going to try and play a clip for this because I've just got it on. It's kind of easily available, and it's the 60s was the beginning of. It was independence. I think 1957, first African country from sub-Saharan Africa, that was Ghana, attained its independence. Then you had Kenya and Nigeria, and then in 1963, then you have Kenya and other countries. So this is a film by the Italians. Where's the sound?
L'Africa dei grandi esploratori, l'immenso territorio di caccia e di avventura che intere generazioni di giovani amarono senza conoscere, è scomparso per sempre. A quell'Africa secolare, travolta e distrutta con la tremenda velocità del progresso, abbiamo detto addio. Le devastazioni, gli scempi, i massacri ai quali abbiamo assistito appartengono a un'Africa nuova. A quell'Africa che, seppure riemergerà dalle proprie rovine, più moderna, più razionale, più funzionale, più consapevole, sarà irriconoscibile. D'altronde il mondo corre verso tempi migliori. La nuova America nacque sopra le tombe di pochi bianchi, di tutti i pellirossa e sulle ossa di milioni di bisonti. La nuova Africa risorgerà lottizzata sulle tombe di qualche bianco, di milioni di negri e su quegli immensi cimiteri che furono una volta le sue riserve di caccia. L'impresa è così moderna e attuale che non è il caso di discuterla sul piano morale. Questo film vuole soltanto dare un addio alla vecchia Africa che muore e affidare alla storia il documento della sua agonia.
You start looking at Africa in a different way from the Italian position, and I think, sorry, and then on the other hand, you had the Russians also saying goodbye to Africa, and in a very kind of interesting way, and which is something called Africa Independence, which I'm going to show just for 2 seconds. Never mind, it doesn't work. And there's this film done by the Russians. It's a film I found in the archives. It's just about the same. It was just the beginning of the Cold War, as it were. You know, the beginning, or just in the middle of the Cold War in the 60s. You had this kind of way to engage with Africa in a different way in film, for different audiences, but for to propagate colonialism, colonial, let's see if I can. Oh yeah, it's going to work. And African cinema came out of that. As African cinema, filmmakers started to engage in a different way with this kind of images in an opposite direction.
В золоте утра, в багрянце заката, с горных вершин, из пронизанных светом саванн к тебе возвращаются дети твои. И все их чувства открыты блеску твоей красы, прозрачности неба и неистовой ласки солнца. Африка, осуши свои слезы.
Африка. Еще недавно она слыла загадочным континентом. Такой была политическая карта Африки совсем недавно. На наших глазах происходило крушение колониальных империй, и сегодня на континенте уже 41 молодое государство. Ветер перемен. Президент суверенного государства. Свое правительство, своя армия, свои национальные праздники.
But it's unfortunate that person who had independence did not have his own image to celebrate or even to participate in the making of these documentaries. So I think in a certain way that, you know, the Francophone filmmakers who are coming from French-speaking Africa had the first benefit of going to film schools, like the IDEC in France. Some of them went to Moscow. I mean, they had an opportunity to go and train as filmmakers to articulate the language of cinema for their own audiences in the continent, for their own audiences in Africa. So the challenges were to, like everyone else goes about, you know, if you're a filmmaker, you really have to go and beg, you know, for it's not only in Africa, all over the world, but mostly in Africa, in the continent, of course, you don't have a film institute, you don't have a foundation, you don't have specific structures that looks after filmmakers. So what we have now is a kind of, you know, one country in the continent, which is South Africa, that has the National Film and Video Foundation of South Africa, which, you know, immediately after the end of apartheid, the NFVF was set up to look after the interests of filmmakers in the continent and in South Africa, but indirectly for the continent itself, because the co-production treaties that South Africa signs with various countries, like, for example, Germany, Germany, Italy, there is Canada, and UK. They go indirectly to other. I mean, they benefit other countries, like in SADC, Southern African Development. Southern African Development. What's the SADC stand for? Southern African Development Community. Yes, I mean, within that, they've got cultural policies that really benefit filmmakers within the region. South Africa in 2006 called for a meeting, a film summit, which was to address the paucity of African images, particularly documentaries on the screen, and to look for a way forward which would engage filmmakers and audiences as well. 2006, this is about 6 years ago. So that has resulted in many initiatives, you know, that says, there's a festival, the Durban International Film Festival, that has got a market. There was a Cape Town Film Festival, you know, which sadly does not work, but, you know, there's so many few initiatives around in South Africa right now that benefit the continent indirectly, but with a kind of a business structure that helps the audiovisual industry itself. And then I think quite recently, I think South Africa got a co-production treaty signed in Cannes with Ireland, right? So I think it's a kind of it's a beginning, I would say, for the continent to begin to build an infrastructure that would make a cinema, I mean, to define that there is a kind of a sustainable kind of industry, you know, in the continent. Nevertheless, there are filmmakers, of course, who continue to make documentaries in the continent. One of them, you know, there's this film called The African Election, which is done by a Ghanaian Swiss filmmaker who went during, I think, a year ago, to try and make a film about this election. I mean, you know, having, you know, what is this? We talk about democracy in Africa, elections, rigged elections. The filmmaker wanted to participate in this, to try and begin to use film as a way to communicate, not just with, you know, just as a kind of describing about, you know, but just to present, I mean, to go through, to observe the elections taking place in Ghana and share the film with the rest of the continent. And what has happened now is that the film is now going to be dubbed throughout the continent with different languages. And I think that in a way that as filmmakers, African filmmakers want to actually sort of engage more directly with their audiences and also equally to participate in the social development, social and political development of the sorry, what am I doing now? So this film, African Election, was it won the best film at the last AMA Awards that has been described by Ogova, which is beginning to be the platform, the best platform for African cinema, if you like, where filmmakers, present their films. It's not a festival. It is like a version of the Oscars, if you like. And it's just the beginning. The film really is just about the elections. And I think one of the other things is that you have filmmakers making films about the kind of lack of accountabilities by politicians in the continent. And you have no, it's not going to work, I think. Sorry, my disc is stuck. And you have a film like Mugabe, for example, which is actually sort of like on festivals. Can someone technical? Can you? Yeah. Sorry.
Ladies and gentlemen, if we can have some quiet. We are not ready to accept these new inflated results. We are not ready to accept these new inflated results.
If others in Africa take it, not Ghana. Ghana is always, whenever this rubbish is happening, a coup steps in. Unlike other countries where you can get up and seize power, in Ghana you can't. You cannot seize power if the people are not craving for it. You cannot. You will fail. They shouldn't push the country. They should not.
The situation facing the country at the moment is a very grave one, and if cool head do not prevail, this country is likely to be hit by a catastrophe.
The next thing is that some people are going to hit the streets, and the situation will become ungovernable. And then somebody will declare state of emergency and go back again. We don't want that.
It's time to leave the rhetoric and focus on the future. A peaceful transition will be an example to the rest of Africa and the world.
We are likely to have a situation where the military, quote unquote, may take over the situation. What is the possibility of that of which the NDC would employ to avoid this chaotic situation?
They're firing at the people.
So, I mean, what you see is that, this is an example of filmmakers taking a position. I mean, this is a brave filmmaking. I mean, the filmmaker went through the whole kind of challenges. You don't go with your camera anywhere near the presidential candidates if you making a film. But he was able to go in a strong room to kind of be able to share with, I mean, to make this film was just, an example of how to participate, to participate with filmmakers, with some filmmakers. Some of the crew were not trained, and he's managed to actually produce such a powerful documentary. Now, where are these films shown? And what Mark was talking about earlier on was that with 500 mobiles in the continent and 500 million receivers in the continent, and it's growing. And that what you have, in a sense, is that everyone should have access to these images somehow along the way. The future is that when you find companies like Zain, who are service provider for mobiles, they're beginning to explore possibilities to sell a handset, to be able to, in a competitive market in Africa where it's growing, to be able to do that. What they've done is that they are now beginning to approach filmmakers to offer an incentive, perhaps say 10 minutes of your film, and put it in there as a kind of, to say that, look, you can have 10 minutes of maybe it can be a video, or for music video, it could be anything. You can use that as a means of actually distributing your work. And that's the future. And I think that, sort of is quite a natural process, a natural progression for distributing, which has always been a problem in the continent itself. That lack of infrastructure with a lot of products coming on the, or a lot of content, a lot of films coming into the market, and you don't have a process to share it with, to reach the audiences. And secondly, the festivals, of course, what Charles is talking about, the festivals. The festivals are limited in Africa. However much they try, we have a festival in Fespaco, the Festival of African Cinema in Fespaco, one of the oldest festivals. It's been running since 1969. It's really largely focused on French-speaking Africa. There is also the Durban International Film Festival, which is more international, very professional. And also there was, and also Kenya, of course, and the Zanzibar International Film Festival. And, there's various, tomorrow I'm going to be in Burundi. I'm going to go to Burundi Film Festival in Burundi. And there's also a festival in Harare. There's a festival in Zimbabwe because of economic problems this last few years. It has been very quiet. There's a Documenta Festival, which is in Mozambique, a Documenta Festival started by Pedro Pimenta, which is a very, very good documentary film festival for those who are interested in taking their films there. And also in Ghana, there's a festival with Ghana, there's a documentary film festival in Ghana. So there's several platforms for festivals, but how do you get, the idea of festivals sometimes is to perhaps, put films on the market. You have buyers who can, come to the festival, perhaps pick titles and with an idea of giving, providing their, respective channels, if you're on television or the cinemas, with titles. But it's not the case in the continent. You don't find buyers from television coming to the festival to buy a film. No, zilch. Nobody comes to the festival to buy films for, their respective multiplexes across the continent because they are owned by somebody else. African theaters, and some of which have been turned into churches, as Charles said, are very few in between. Only countries I think I can remember is Kenya and Zimbabwe, South Africa. They still have all this kind of theaters that continue to receive the same, menu of movies that you get from Hollywood every time at expense of local audiences. So how do you bypass that? You have to bypass by actually giving different possibilities of platforms, which is what I mentioned, the mobile technology, and perhaps to some extent the internet. Internet is really, they're working very, very hard to provide that as a serious platform that will challenge all these other kind of, the distributors who are really fighting tooth and nail to make sure that, you don't get an African film in the center of the city. You have a middle class who have got disposable cash in Kenya, in Zimbabwe, in Zambia, in anywhere else. That they want to go on a night out. All they see is the kind of usual menu of, the kind of Terminator. It's usually the B movies, those films that are so old that, nobody wants to see them anywhere in the world. So how do you challenge that? How do you bypass that? You bypass by providing different platforms. These platforms have enabled filmmakers to come up with to develop this relationship with internet distribution possibilities. In Nigeria, which is quite interesting with so-called Nollywood, which is a model which I think people are beginning to pay attention here, because you find there's a model which is really, it's, I mean, in terms of its, Nollywood is about, the kind of televisual stuff. It's not cinema as such, but there is a possibility to use that as a vehicle to the channel as a vehicle to sell our images, particularly documentary films, on those kind of channels. The way they've done it is to have to immediately get their films straight to the market, straight to the audiences, without any kind of middleman. And I think that for me, it's kind of the future for African documentary films. And also the other issues are that to actually introduce film schools, there are very few film schools in the continent. And also that you have South Africa, you have Ghana, and which other country has got a film school? You've got Burkina Faso. Imagine Burkina Faso, which is collaborating with John Huston Film School, and of course you have the Ethiopian Film Initiative, which is trying to have a relationship, to formulate a relationship with the University of Addis Ababa. If that works, that would be quite an important film school in East Africa, to my mind. So I think this is a very quick overview, and we are here to take any questions. And if you want to watch more films, I'm quite happy to advise where to get these films. And yes, that's all I can say. Yeah.